You know it's interactive and we love it when we get your thoughts. The WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. And we're also streaming live up on our YouTube channel. It's Smooth981. You can catch the live stream and also just post a comment on there if you want to. And I've got Rotus on the show, as always. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning to all our listeners, viewers, and of course, our special guests from Stanbic IBTC as well.
Yes, and all right, so let's introduce our guest this morning. Our guest is Olayinka Adesanya. He's a consumer and agro-allied analyst, equity research from Stanbic IBTC. Good morning, Olayinka, and welcome to Business Express.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Happy to be here.
All right. And let's get straight into the conversation. Still on the subject of subsidies, petrol subsidies.
Yeah, so we've got the Labour Congress, the NLC, saying that the country will be lit on fire if fuel subsidies are removed. And then we had an update. Yeah, we had an update from the federal government yesterday, I believe, saying that they've secured about $800 million from the World Bank to assist with palliatives for fuel subsidies, which I thought was very interesting. But I wanted to start globally before we come to Nigeria, just on the oil and gas front. I understand, but we understand that Saudi Arabia has increased prices of its grades of fuel that is going to be selling to Asia in May. And then also even the OPEC plus cuts, the surprise cuts to output. I wanted to get your take on that. And then Saudi Arabia raising the prices of its grades of fuel to Asia going into the month of May.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. If I should start with the OPEC cut, I think one thing we should note is that oil producers majorly, they like oil above $80 per barrel. And when you look at the month of March, we saw some moderation in oil price. That's moderated to around $70 per barrel level. And that was largely because of the crisis we saw in the banking space that affected financial markets generally and brought oil price lower. So the market was not expecting this cut. And that is because when you look at oil producers, as I mentioned earlier, they prefer oil prices above $80 per barrel. So that's why they came into the market to reduce supply. And on the back of that, we've seen prices go up. We've seen prices above $80 on an average since the announcement on Monday. I think it has averaged around $84 per barrel. So this is fine for producers, and this is where they like it. So thinking about Saudi Arabia and their price revision for Asian countries, I think the benefits for them is that pricing. If you consider the fact that they are reducing production, cutting production on their own side, our estimate is above 1 million barrels per day, because the recent one is about 500,000 barrels. I think they did another 500,000 in November last year, so bringing it above 1 million barrels per day now. So if they are reducing their volumes, you'd expect them to take the most benefit they can on the pricing side, and I can see some reason in that why they are revising their prices for the Asian market. So that is my take on that.
Okay, very interesting what's happening on the global front. So I guess coming to Nigeria, the NLC's language saying that the country will catch fire if their subsidies are removed. Is that just normal union talk, or what do you make of it? Or is it forecasting difficulties? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. Union talk, part of it, and also the difficulty. I think it is well pronounced. If we take our mind back to the period where we had scarcity, I think late last year, we saw some filling stations selling for around 300 naira per liter, while we saw the major distributors selling around 185. to my surprise, you'll see people fighting and queuing up at that level of 185. They were fighting there, they were staying 2-3 hours there just to get 4. So I think that just points to affordability, whereby you see Nigerians are not ready to pay 300 naira per liter for 4. So if you remove subsidy in totality, I think marketers have mentioned about 750 naira per liter. Compare 750 naira to the 300 naira where people were reluctant to buy. I think, yes, the country may not be on fire, but the difficulty will be widespread. And also you see that impact going across all sectors, coming from food, going to transport prices, everything will go up. Inflation will be telling in the near term once subsidy is totally removed.
Do you know, I mean, I've seen a number of price forecasts for fuel subsidy removals. So, you know, some, I think NNPC gave a forecast of 400, but I don't know if that includes subsidized FX to bring imported fuel. Just the other last week or so, we saw another forecast for 750 naira per liter. Do you have any idea? I mean, I guess if it's deregulated, what price we might land on?
So for us, we see it around 600. I think one close estimate you could use is when you consider the pricing of fuel in our neighboring countries. Take Benin, for instance. Price of fuel, petrol around there is about $1. So depending on where you're converting your naira at, if you convert at the parallel markets, probably wherever it is 750, that's where you'll be getting your liter now. And if you use the official window, it will be closer to 500 naira. So as you mentioned, it's probably a subsidized FX rate, but reality, it's where you can source your dollars that you'd price your commodity, right?
That makes sense. So where do you guys fall on this subsidy thing? I mean, do you think it should be removed? There's two questions. One, do you think it should be removed? Two, do you think it will be removed? Because I know all the candidates that ran for office said they will take it out. Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a president-elect. He says we remove it, but the closer we get to this end of June deadline, at once where the budget accounts for it, I don't know the way all this. What do you think will happen? Because I thought he sounded confident that he will remove it, but I don't know if he will follow through.
Yeah. So thinking of where we fall on this view, I think our view is for a partial removal. It is best to phase it out. So not just take it out totally. You do like say 10% reduction, 15%. Over a period of time, you see that reduction come into play. And I think the market will be able to absorb that. But if you consider a total removal, I think the impact will be severe on the populace. If you go back to the time where they passed the PIE, there was talks about removal of subsidy, but we saw the government come back to say, okay, we extend it by 18 months. So if I'm to go by that, I think history might replay. You have a new government coming into their tenure in May. You don't expect the first thing for them to do is bring hardship into the economy, removing subsidy in June. So for me, I think they will probably go to the table again to discuss this. Maybe we will not see a total removal, probably partial removal, and they will face it out from there. But I don't think we'll see a total removal in the near term.
So that means that if you're doing a partial removal, then you have to account for it fiscally, right? They'll have to pay for some of that.
Yeah. There will be some pricing into that. There'll be some provision in our budget for that.
Okay, well, so speaking of provisions, I don't know how they did this, but they say they've gotten a secured $800 million from the World Bank, the same World Bank that has been telling them to remove subsidies.
Remove subsidy. True.
I don't know. Anyway, what do you make of that development?
Palliative. I think for me, when it comes to palliative, maybe the World Bank being involved, maybe it could be more transparent, maybe it could be more effective. But I think we've seen how our leaders could be with palliatives, so I'm not so optimistic about that. But what I will say about palliatives is, I don't think it will be that effective. It's better when you see the government investing in infrastructure with the savings from fuel subsidy removal, put that money into infrastructure, better road connection, better transport system. I think that will be better for the economy as a whole, instead of giving, say, 10 million households, maybe 5,000 naira for the next 6 months or something like that. I don't think that is an effective way or efficient way to go by it. So the savings you get from subsidy is better put into infrastructure spend.
Interesting. It's going to be very fascinating seeing how things play out. What about the argument that with palliatives, you're just substituting one subsidy for another? What do you make of that argument?
I think that's basically what it is. It's you're taking savings from fuel subsidy removal and you're giving this money back to some people. I think that's basically what it is, substituting one cost for the other. But yes, we are going to save if we remove, but I think it's still the way we spend this money that matters a lot. It is not giving it out for free over a period of time. That won't be long lasting. That will probably be for a max of 2 years, 6 months thereabout. But infrastructure spend, it is long lasting. It will serve the populace at large. So my view is still infrastructure spend instead of palliative.
Speaking of infrastructure, I can't let you go without asking you about cement. What do you think? What's the outlook for the sector? I think on the NGX, this index was just barely off about 0.04% or so. But looking forward, infrastructure needs and so on, how do you see this cement sector, industrials in Nigeria?
Okay, so I think it was in late February thereabout or early March, we saw all three major producers, the three major producers are all listed. We saw them release their financials and we saw a rally on the back of that. Also, another thing that's driven market in recent times is the share buyback announcements by Dangote Cement. On the back of that, we saw price rally. I think it touched about 290 levels from 270 previously. So that's the market has been positive this year, kind of. But looking at the sector operations, I think for us, what we see is some increments in competition. We expect volume growth in that space, but we still see pressure when it comes to margins. That is largely because of cost increase. In 2022, significantly, we saw cost increase. As we mentioned earlier, oil prices are going up. You'll see that impact diesel prices, which will also impact distribution prices. So for these producers, we saw the cost of production from the back of energy price, or we saw distribution costs also go up significantly. It is still elevated and they are not able to increase prices significantly because of the macros we have outplaying right now, and also competition increasing, they can't significantly increase prices. So we still see pressure in the near term. But when you look at the company specifically, we still see growth for all three producers. I think Dangote Cement, we expect about single digits earnings growth, largely because of its size. But when you look at the smaller players, Boa Cement, Lafarge Cement, you could see low double digit earnings growth there. And I think overall, the outlook is is quite positive, but that competition with increasing volume still will play some negative into that space in the near term.
All right.
Solid. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Benga says, for cement, Nigeria is a country of contradictions. What is moving market sales? Do we have a boom in construction? Another message, that money for palliatives is money for the boys. Those who will afford noodles. Can you trust them?
Yeah.
Where is the money for census next month going to come from? Moses says, but why is no one talking about investigating the subsidy regime? Fuel consumption doubled in the last 2 years.
So money for the boys.
Money for the boys, absolutely.
Yinka, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time and you taking us through the oil and gas sector and also the cement sector. And thanks to all our listeners as well for their messages. Really appreciate them as well. Zibby.
All right, thank you. Have a brilliant day ahead, fellas.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is all the time that we have for a Business Express this morning. Just stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast. 58.1. Love music. Business